Welcome to Monolith Mondays. My name is Megan. I'm the marketing manager here at Monolith Forensics. If you haven't been to a Monolith Mondays before, basically what we do is every Monday at 10 a.m. Central Time, somebody from the Monolith team does a live demo of a feature set or a workflow inside of Monolith to kind of showcase all the things the platform can do, maybe things you haven't explored yet in your particular workflows. And it also gives you guys a chance to ask us questions directly to our team. So today, we have our solutions engineer, Andrew, is going to walk us through a deep dive of evidence items, focusing on, I believe, storage items and acquisitions. I'll let him correct me if I'm wrong. Let me add him here. Oh, Andrew, I think I see you twice in the attendee tab. So hopefully I picked the right one when I promote you to a panelist. Remote. All right, let me try the other Andrew. Remote.
Hey everyone.
Andrew. Good morning.
There I am. I was joined in duplicate, I guess. You can hear me okay?
Yep, sure can.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for the great introduction, Megan, and welcome everyone here on this Monday morning. Today I'm gonna dive into some features of evidence and the acquisitions portion of evidence. And as part of the acquisitions, I'll dive a little deeper into storage items in Monolith and how you can keep track of those acquisitions as you're working through the forensics process. So let me go ahead and we'll share my screen. And yeah, as Megan says, get your questions ready. I'm gonna try to run through this in about 20 minutes or so, but we will see how that goes. So I'll start with sharing my Google Chrome window. And so you can see I'm logged into Monolith already here on my computer. And I'm going to reuse a case that I previously covered on Monolith Monday a few weeks ago, where I went over case and evidence items. So I think it was called Operation Dial-Up. You may have recalled some of the nostalgia there. We've got the 1998 case number and some really old devices to kind of go through this together. So that's one way, I can search in the evidence grid. The other way, hey, maybe I forgot what I was doing. Let me just go back to my dashboard and my recent cases, right? So that could be another quick way to navigate back to something that you recently worked on. Great. So we have the case overview screen of Operation Dial-Up. The goal today, like I said, is to show how evidence items act as one of the most important connection points in Monolith. So as you get into your monolith and you start creating cases, think of the case as the central hub for all of the things in monolith. And then the evidence items, so we have the evidence tab. Think of that as the items as the spokes, like spokes in a wheel. So each evidence item is going to connect a lot of information, right? So you have your evidence, metadata, your notes, photos, chain of custody, acquisitions, and reporting. So I'll show you here the evidence section. So that's at the top. Generally, things flow left to right, but you can bounce around between these tabs in the case at any time. So we're gonna go back into this awesome case where we have our floppy disk. We've got our old desktop computer and our Nokia cell phone as our examples, and we even pulled a hard drive out of the computer, right? And we made that a child item. So you'll see a little differentiation there with the different color font there for the child item. So as you kind of watch me go through this today, just think of, how is your team tracking, this information today? When you go in and you create this particular evidence item that you have for your case and you add it into the case and you're entering in information in this form, think of the importance of capturing that information as you go through the case process. And then just know that you always have this handy notes section as well to be, you know, typing in your notes as you go through the process as well. All of this information is going to collect and tied together in those spokes and the hub, and it's going to allow you to easily report on that information later. So, more detailed that you are as you fill out these forms, you see the evidence overview screen here. All this information that we filled in is able to be exported out. So I'm going to go back out here to the notes and I'm just going to briefly go over my previous Monolith Monday. So last time we covered kind of a lot of just related information in those spokes or evidence items, right? So we covered, hey, we've got the case as the hub and we've got the evidence items, which include all of these different areas, and we filled out those evidence items last time here on Monolith Monday. And we even touched into some settings and implementation. So there was a lot of information last time. So I'm going to try to just keep it more tied to kind of the process that you follow. So think evidence, some of the supporting information, and then acquisitions and how you can store that data. So I have a new note here to kind of give you that overview before we go through. So I even drew together a diagram here. So we have a lot of repetition, the case as the hub, the evidence as the spokes, and a high level schematic here of, hey, we've got our case operation dial up, those evidence items, exactly what I just showed you, kind of all that metadata and information about those. And as you start working through to the forensics process and you have all your information captured about the evidence item itself, capturing also, the forensic image or copy of that device that you're going to take as part of the process in the acquisitions tab at the top here. So that'll sort of be where I head next. And then as part of that acquisition, just like our chain of custody and physical tracking of where does the actual device live in Monolith and throughout the process, tracking that information. There's also some tracking as well of where these acquisitions live. So there's a couple different ways that you can track those acquisitions from a storage perspective. So again, I want to show you the high level before I dive in and show you how it works. So we got some more review here, and then a fun infographic showing just at a high level how you can track those acquisitions in Monolith. So there's kind of two ways you can do it. You create that acquisition, that forensic image, and you track where in Monolith do I have that actual acquisition? Where did I store that? Did I assign a physical drive of some sort to the case itself and track the physical chain of custody within Monolith, such as, you know, a DVD ROM, external hard drive, maybe you have a cache of hard drives or flash drives. So tracking that information that way, or perhaps you have some sort of network storage device. And so in Monolith, we refer to that as general storage. There's a flag for that. And keeping track of where all that data lives, agnostic of case. So maybe you have network store one and you have data from 100 different cases in Monolith tracked against that particular storage item. So a couple different ways to do it. The physical storage tracking is really nice too, especially if you have a lot of drives that you want to keep track of, hey, which data went to which drive, where is that drive today? Or, hey, where is this on our storage array? We've got a bunch of data from a bunch of cases. So that's kind of the high level overview. I'll just pause for 1 second and then we will go over into the acquisitions tab and we can fill this out and I'll show you how the storage works. So acquisition tab, so you can come straight here into acquisitions and create a new acquisition as you're working through, and you can select from your evidence items that you've already entered into the case. So that's one way to get started with the acquisition. Or if we know we're already in the evidence tab, maybe we're already taking a look or entering some details on a particular device, like this cell phone, we can come in to this sub acquisition tab directly for this particular cell phone. So that's another strategy. So in this case, we've got the Nokia phone. We've got our intake we did a couple months back. Now we're ready to start working on this data. We've got our awesome photograph that we took. It's like, hey, it's time. We've got Celebrite in the lab. We're ready to go ahead and work on this particular acquisition. So we can go ahead and start filling out this information. So we've got a logical extraction, and we're going to pull a logical collection. This software, of course, lives in the software section in Monolith, so you can add all of the software that you have. And then you can also keep track, as you're doing different acquisitions over time, maybe your software version changes. So there's a lot of information here. So this is the storage section. We'll pause on that for a second, and I'll show you both uh, general storage, those network shares, and then also physical storage, which we don't have any right now. So I'll show you how to populate that and use that if that's how you like to store and keep track of these acquisitions. So so just think of the process. You're in the lab, you've got this device connected to one of your forensics tools, and you're going through the process and you're capturing this information that we'll report on later. So we can pull these hash values, get this populated. Hey, when did I do this acquisition? How long did it take? Well, this one was super fast because it was a really old Nokia device, right? So we can do that. We can also, another, part of the spoke in the evidence item is kind of interconnection. So we know that this belongs to the custodian on this case. That's a contact in the contact section. So I'm going to say, hey, this acquisition that we're working on right now relates to this particular person. And then we could put some information about, hey, what was um, in the notes section. So we've got a fictitious Nokia phone to demonstrate using Celebrite Premium. So just some information about the work that we're doing. And so the storage items. So this isn't necessarily, we're not necessarily saving this acquisition in Monolith. We're using Monolith as a place to track where that data is saved. So you might have an acquisition that you want to store in multiple places. Perhaps you have a pristine copy or something you don't want anything to happen to. Maybe you put that on your network share somewhere. And perhaps you create a second copy, and that might be your working copy to start doing your investigation. Start taking a look at that particular data, going through the chats or messages, things like that, right? So during the acquisition process and the first initial creation of Monolith, you have the option to um, add more than one device for this. So you see, you can actually create multiple. And so what that'll do basically is it just makes a copy of that acquisition. It just saves it in two places. So something to note, you can only do that during the initial acquisition phase. If I come in and I edit one of these previous ones, you'll see it's a singular drop down. You don't get the opportunity to do it twice. So it's kind of a real just easy way to make a copy, basically, if you know it's going to two places. Okay, so um, we've added the acquisition for this Nokia device, and we saved it to one of um, the general storage locations, right? So we have all of these general storage locations. So these are those network shares. So these have to be added in advance to Monolith, and then you can select from them in any case. They're case agnostic. So you could say, hey, I've got, an acquisition from this case. I put it on Cohesity Network Share. And so what that'll do is if you click now on this particular storage, which you can add storage to your grid, right? So you can add the storage column. You click on cohesity, and what you'll see here is information about this particular network share that you added to Monolith. So you'll get to see the size, how much data is on it. Obviously, we went way overboard here. We're negative free space. Um, and you see some information about that particular share, but the stored data is the big one, right? So we have over 200 different pieces of acquisition stored on this particular network share that we're tracking within Monolith. And then if we did any audits or anything like that, we would also see that here on the audits log. So how do I add this network storage to Monolith? Well, on the left sidebar, you have the storage items tab. So you can come in here at any time and you can say, hey, let me add a new storage to Monolith. We've just got this network share set up. So we can go ahead and say, hey, we've got a file share, and you can name it um, file share Monolith Monday. And we really splurged and we got ourselves a 10 terabyte drive. We can put in some information about that, such as the serial number. And you can go more advanced. So you see this option right here, general storage. So general storage means that you can store to this from any case. So think of those network shares. We do want this option. If we go with the other option, I'll take you down that path next. That's going to be if you're entering a drive into Monolith that you want to assign to a specific case, then you would say no. So you can put more information about this particular share. We can say, hey, it's a Blade server. We can put the brand in, so on and so forth. Encryption key is a cool field too, so you put something in there. It's like a show hide field, right? So we can put something and we click the little eyeball. And so we've got this file share Monolith Monday. So we create this storage device, and then you can hop right in and view it. And right now we don't have any stored data, right? So if we went back into Operation Dialup and we went back over to our acquisition and we edited this particular acquisition, and we say, hey, actually, I didn't store this on the cohesity. I store this on the, and we can sort of can search that particular. Now, of course, now I can't find it. Ah, that's funny. Um, so maybe we should have grabbed that exact name from the storage item. But the idea is, yeah, that this storage item will be selectable because it's general, it's added as general storage. So let me go ahead and just copy and paste this. And then we'll go back into our case, acquisition, edit, and it doesn't like me. There it is. See, super easy. And so now we updated the location that we are sharing this, that we're storing this information. And now we see, hey, look, there's one thing stored on here. It's a 10 terabyte drive. We're only storing 2.4 gigs on it. Boom. We've got plenty of space left. We can go ahead and use this again on our next acquisition. So the other way, we go back into our case and we go to an evidence item. And let's say we go back into our acquisitions. This other copy is, on this, we still don't have any of these assigned storage items. So this is the other pathway I wanted to give you, and then I'll open it up for questions. So there's the storage items tab within the case, and you see it's empty despite us storing data. Because we stored data to those global sort of drives that are considered general storage, they're not necessarily assigned to this case. They're available in any case. But let's say you have a physical drive. We've got a DVD and, 4 gig DVD. We can put some information. We can go ahead and create this particular storage device and assign it to this case. The DVD is a pretty bad example, but it goes in line with, the 90s of this case. So let's just go with a hard drive here to make it a little bit So we've got a Western Digital hard drive. Let's say it's a 100 gig drive. We can go ahead and add some information about that particular device. So we've got some fictitious model number here. We can add the brand. We can put that encryption key field, which is kind of that fun show hide. And that way we have, that information somewhere handy if we do decide to encrypt that data. So we can go ahead and add this drive. And the nice thing about adding a drive directly to a case is it will be, you can start that tracking process for that chain of custody and that location, right? So we can say, hey, I'm going to assign this initially to myself and assigning this case drive to operation dial up. And we can e-sign that. I've got my signature already saved in my user preferences, something you can do to make that process a little easier. And we've got ourselves this storage item associated with this case. And so what that's doing, if we go back into acquisitions and we edit an acquisition, you'll see now we have this section now has something populated. So that's sort of the difference between assigned and general storage. Assigned is going to be of that physical, type of media typically. And it's so that if you want to keep a drive associated to just a singular case and control that and track the chain of custody and some other elements, you can do that. We've seen um, both cases come into play where you have those network drives that are general storage, or hey, I want to create a drive just for this case, track it, and you'll start to see, the chain of custody and stuff as well. So you have that. You can see, hey, yeah, I've got this extraction stored on it. Now it's time. Hey, I need to move this particular item. I finished my acquisition. Maybe I want to put it on the evidence safe and put this away. Like, hey, and then you can select your reason. Collected data, ready to move to storage. Right. And so just like we were tracking chain of custody and location information of the actual evidence item, we can also do the same for that digital acquisition that we're keeping track of. So a couple of different ways to do it. Just to recap, if we go back into our notes, you can assign storage devices directly to the case. Track chain of custody, things like that. Or you can create those general network storage, general storage devices, and they'll be case agnostic. Also, if you have a pile of drives or something like that, you can in advance enter those into general, into the storage section globally in Monolith, and then you can come in to this case, into the storage items, and you can assign a storage item. So you'd be like, hey, you know what? I have like a cache of drives. I've entered them into Monolith already in the generic storage area. I really want to use this particular drive for this case, right? So you could do that in advance. We've seen that as well. So um, that's all I got for sharing. I will stand by for some questions.
Anybody have
Any
questions? Oh, sorry, Andrew, didn't mean to talk over you there.
Sorry, we're both at the same time. Yeah, I don't see any in the chat. Megan, I don't know if you got any in or if you have some questions, happy to answer them as well.
I don't see any in the chat or the Q&A. Something I did want to ask. So once you start assigning chain of custody to an assigned storage item, can you track like where it's stored in the item locations portion of Monolith as well?
Right, yeah, so it's gonna behave very similarly to those evidence items. So you'll see that chain of custody and like if we go into that particular location space, you'll see that there. So um So in this particular case, we added this Western Digital drive, right? And chain of custody, we moved this drive to shelf one, box one here, which I believe was in the Austin office. Let's see, shelf one. Yeah, so the office. So you'll see that on the sidebar. So if you go into item locations and then you go into that particular office, so we can go into the Austin office and then we can go to that particular, I think it was under exam table, no, shelf one, box one here under evidence safe category. And you'll see there's a separate tab actually. So you have, maybe those physical evidence items, and then also you'll see a tab for storage items specifically. So we see here's that drive, and you'll see the assigned case as well. So Western Digital, and then you see the case number. So that's this drive right here. So that's where that will show up.
Awesome. That was all I have for questions. Anybody else have questions? Going once, going twice. All right. Well, in that case, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you, Andrew, for walking us through that. That was very, very in-depth. I, for one, very much appreciated it. So thank you everybody for coming today, and we'll see you next week at the next Monolith Monday. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day.